today's episode, I'll be giving my predictions and picks for UFC 310 with a betting eye on the fights to see what I like and what I don't like. So let's dive right into UFC 310. Do something, man. People are questioning you. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, yep, do that. Sure, guys. Stupid and dumb. Just an idiot. Get your shit together, son. Fuck it. I loved it. Welcome to the DubCast. Before we get started with UFC 310, let's quickly recap UFC 309. We do all the numbered cards on this cast. So once again, I went 0 for 4 on the picks. My overall record is 13-23. Not great. Got to do better. Got to improve. So we'll see what happens. This is our 10th card. Doing a cast for it. So we've just gotten worse over the past 3 have been pretty rough. So hoping to rebound on this one. So while we lost our bets last time, Deniz looked like a joke. Just completely outclassed by Spivak. Jonathan Martinez didn't capitalize on a weak leg from Marcus McGee, and Stipe is just old, so that lost us our round robin. Only one of those picks hit. Damon Jackson was just a bad bet. He gets submitted by Miller, then retires, leaves the ring. Don't know what was up with that. Missed that one, but that was a pretty bad fight. Silva, she loses a fight she should have won. That should have been a win for our parlay. The judges on that one just got to us. You know, that's what's tough about this MMA and UFC betting is judges can just get you and you lose a fight. Like, that's pretty simple as that. Oban Elliott, we needed his fight to go the distance. He knocks out Hafez early in the third round, negating that distance parlay. It is what it is. Can't be too mad about that. Oban Elliott looks pretty good. Other main event notes, we had a Bo Nickal fight that was pretty boring against Paul Craig. Bo Nickal, why aren't you leading into your wrestling? You're a fucking college champion wrestler. I mean, it's been said a million times, but dude, wrestle. No one wants to see you stand up and be boring. So next fight, Bo Nickal. At least he got the W though, so his prospect standing is still there. So now, enough with UFC 309. Let's dive into UFC 310. So UFC 310 takes place in Las Vegas, Nevada at the T-Mobile Arena. It's the last big numbered card of the year. So honestly, looking at this card, it's a pretty good card. I thought we could find a better opponent for Shavkat, but Ian Gary is a pretty good opponent. Undefeated versus undefeated, so that's my fight I'm looking forward to the most in this card. What about you guys? What's your favorite fight from this card? Some good ones at the end there. That Pantoja-Asakura matchup's pretty interesting. I'm excited to see Gane fight again. Bryce Mitchell. Some middle tier fight. That Sterling Evlov fight is crazy. So some really good prelims as well. So let's dive right into UFC 310. So starting with the early prelims, our first fight is a heavyweight bout between Kennedy and Nzechukwu. He is minus 600 on the money line. He faces off against Lukasz's Brzeski. He is plus 400 on the money line. So being that we've already done 9 UFC numbered card videos, I usually like to give a little preview about the fighter, then make my picks for the fight. So a lot of these fighters we've already talked about in previous UFC videos, so I will reference those, and you can go back and watch those if you want to hear my full breakdown of that person. So starting with Kennedy, we covered him in the UFC 308 video. He got a knockout win over Chris Barnett. That one was pretty easy. Chris Barnett just fell on his ankle, or he jumped before the fight, and so that was a pretty easy win for Kennedy. He did look pretty good though, just dominating him in the first round, knocking him out. So he just heavily outmatched Barnett. So briefly, 9 of his 13 wins have come via knockout. He does have some bad losses, and only 5 of his 18 fights have gone the distance. His opponent, the underdog, Lukaz Brzeski. So we covered him in the UFC 304 video where he was knocked out by Mick Parkin in July of this year. So coming back 6 months later, he did not look good at all in that fight. I thought Brzeski would make the distance. I believe I had Mick Parkin by distance, but it was a round 1 easy finish for Parkin. Brzeski did not look good in that fight and was heavy underdog in that fight as well. He only has 1 UFC win. He's 1-4 in his last 5 fights. He's got knocked out in his last 2 losses. 3 of his last 5 fights have gone to decision. So the picks here, usually don't like to bet on the first fight of the night, but we've been kind of breaking that trend lately. So Kennedy opens up as a big favorite again here, and I completely see the reason. He just seems to be a step above Brzeski at this point. Kennedy is coming in on about 2 weeks short notice. Brzeski's opponent did pull out, but I believe No, I think Chris Barnett came in on short notice last time. I don't really see it mattering in this case. I think Brzezinski will be knocked out again. I'm not sure when in the fight it'll happen, but I doubt this ends up going the distance. And I think Brzezinski, this will be his last fight in the UFC after this fight, after Nzechukwu knocks him out. So potential bet I'm looking at there is Kennedy by knockout. On to our second fight of the early prelims. We have a lightweight bout between Clay Guida. He is plus 650 on the money line. He faces off against Chase Hooper, who is a whopping minus 1150 on the money line. So a little bit about Clay. We have not covered him yet in the channel. He's 42 years old. This will be his 60th career fight, so congrats on 60 career fights. He's been in the UFC since 2006. He's beat Nate Diaz, Rafael Dos Anjos, Anthony Pettis, BJ Penn in 2019, Michael Johnson in 2021. He lost to Coach Din Thomas, Diego Sanchez, Chad Mendez, Brian Ortega, Charles Oliveira, Jim Miller, and King Green. In his last 5 fights, he's 2-3. So he has 38 wins. 17 of them have come via decision. He has 15 submission wins and 6 knockout wins. He's lost by decision 10 times, been submitted 9 times, and knocked out only 2 times. So has a little bit of a tough chin on Clay there. So his opponent, Chase Hooper, yet to cover him as well. He's been in the UFC since 2019. He's not beat anyone notable, or at least anybody that I recognize. He lost to Alex Caceres. He's 6-3 overall in the UFC. He did fight in May, got a submission win in the middle of round 2 in that fight there. So half of his wins have come via submission, 4 wins have come via knockout, and 3 wins via decision. So he has lost by decision 2 times and been knocked out once. All of his losses have come within the UFC, so he came in undefeated and has been kind of brought down a little bit just due to those losses. Obviously did not keep his unbeaten. So the picks here, the odds are so high in this fight. I mean, you have Hooper at minus 1150, not really anything to look at there. Neither side is worth betting on, in my opinion. Guida is 42 years old and will probably retire at any moment. I just can't see him beating a young and upcoming Hooper. While Hooper's odds being over 1,000, I'm looking at alternate bets for him and for him to win via submission is popping out to me in my mind. Not sure what the odds on that are yet. We're filming this on Tuesday night, so those kind of special picks have not come out yet. He's won his last 2 fights via submission, along with another one in the UFC, and that has been a strong suit of Hooper's during his career. Hooper, I think, is a rising prospect, so they're kind of just throwing someone in front of him so he can advance in the rankings, move up to the next group, get a bigger fight. So the only bet we're looking at here is Hooper by submission, although if the odds are like minus 200 or more, we're not taking that. It just, this is a fight you don't touch because it's minus 1150. You just enjoy the Hooper win. Next fight in the early prelims, we have a welterweight bout between Michael Chiesa, and he faces off against Max Griffin. So Michael Chiesa has been in the UFC since 2012. He's beat Al Iaquinta, Beneil Dariush, Carlos Condit, Diego Sanchez, Rafael Dos Anjos, Neil Magny, Tony Ferguson. Most recently in August, he has lost to Masvidal, Kevin Lee, Anthony Pettis, Vicente Luque, who's on this card actually, Sean Brady, Kevin Holland. He was on a 3-fight loss streak before submitting Tony Ferguson in August of this year. So 12 of Chiesa's wins have come via submission. He has 7 decision wins, and he's never knocked anybody out. 5 of his 7 losses have come via submission, 1 decision loss, and 1 knockout loss. His opponent, Max Griffin, the slight favorite in this fight. He has been in the UFC since 2016. He's beat Mike Perry, Song Kanan, Carlos Condit, who's a common opponent between the both of them, Tim Means. He's lost to Colby Covington, Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, Alex Morono, Neil Magny, another common opponent there who Michael Chiesa actually beat. He's 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He's 39 years old, so a fight between 2 kind of elder statesmen in the UFC. Granted, 36 or upper 30s is not really that old, but in the UFC that's kind of nearing the end. So 9 of Max Griffin's 20 wins have come via knockout. He has 9 decision wins and 2 submission wins. He has lost via decision 9 times, only knocked out once, and he's never been submitted. So the picks here, honestly, I'm kind of liking Chiesa here as a strong underdog. When I did the write-up for this, he was at plus 110. Now he's down to minus 105, so we'll see where his odds end up going. Seems like the money's kind of coming in on Chiesa. Obviously, this being a fight between 2 older gentlemen, I think Chiesa can prevail in this. I mean, I've seen over the last couple cards, even Jim Miller at the last card got that submission win over Damon Jackson. Court McGee versus Tim Means is standing out. Like, there's a lot of these older fighters that go head to head and just anything can happen because they're like kind of on the end of their career. You don't really know who's going to be good and who's going to wake up with their, you know, on the right side of the bed or whatever. So I think this one will probably go the distance if I had to guess. Chase by decision. I'm not confident enough to bet that though. I think there is a possibility of a Chase a submission, even a Griffin knockout, something like that. I mean, Chase has gone down in a lot of his past couple fights. So due to Griffin and Chase's age, I'm not betting distance. So what we're looking at here, I like Chase a money line, and I also like throwing this fight to go the distance. Moving up on the early prelims, we have a flyweight bout between the number 14th ranked Cody Durden. He's plus 130 on the money line. He faces off against Joshua Van, who's minus 155 on the money line. So Cody Durden, he's been in the UFC since 2020. He's beat Arochi Lang, who we saw at UFC 7. He's beat Charles Johnson, Jake Hadley, who's now out of the UFC, Matt Schnell. He lost to Muhammad Mokaev, who's out of the UFC now, Bruno Silva. He did submit Matt Schnell in September of 2024, so 3 months ago. Plenty of time off a submission win. So when it comes to wins, he can do it all. He's got 6 knockout wins, 6 submissions, 5 decision wins, so all high variance there. Can do it any of which of ways. All but one win within the UFC has been by decision though. So, you know, when he came to the UFC, it's kind of been more decisions there. 4 of his 6 losses have come via being submitted. He was knocked out once, and he's lost 1 decision. So really, when he's lost, it's been mostly by submission. So Joshua Van, his opponent, the favorite in this fight, we covered him in the UFC 306 video as well, where he won a decision over Edgar Chairez. That was a crazy and close fight. I think that was the second fight of the night. I remember watching that fight. That was a pretty good fight. Van did do a little bit more, but Chairez was dangerously close to beating him. Van is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, and only fights are in his. He's 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Those are only 5 fights in the UFC. He's KO power, but most of his UFC fights have ended up going to decision. He also can pull submissions and has never lost a decision to this point. So the picks here, I'm not too sure on the result for this one. I would lean towards Joshua Van just from what I saw from him last time, surviving that crazy fight with Edgar Chairez. I do think Cody Durden's a little bit of a better opponent than Chairez, though. I may actually be thinking of throwing a little bit of money on Durden just if I need a bet. I think this could be a decent play against the odds with this fight going the distance due to both their variability in the ways of method of finishing, but neither of them really go down. I think they both have pretty good chins. So I do like this fight to go over in rounds if it's at 1.5. If it's at 2.5, whatever, just take it to go the distance. So those are the 2 bets I'm looking at for this fight. So last fight in the early prelims is a catchweight bout between Chris Weidman. He's minus 115. He faces off against Eric Anders, who's minus 105 on the money line. So we covered this exact fight in UFC 309, the preview there. If you want to go head over there and check that out. My thoughts have not changed on that fight at all. This is even worse now. I'm just completely staying away from this fight. I have no idea. So be it as it may, I'm not touching anything in that fight. Wish the best for Chris Weidman and his recovery from that nasty leg injury. So now we got to the prelims. Our first fight in the prelims is a welterweight bout between Randy Brown. He's plus 185 on the money line. He faces off against Brian Battle, who's minus 225 on the money line. So Randy Brown, we covered him in the UFC 302 video, where he got a victory over Elizo Zaleski dos Santos, a decision win there. Remember being a little bit scared about that going the distance, but Randy Brown did enough to get the victory there, and yeah, there wasn't really a lot of action in that fight, if I'm remembering correctly. So 5 of Randy's last 7 fights have gone to decision. He does have strong knockout power and can pull submissions. He isn't prone to be taken out anyway, all pretty much equal. So if Battle's going to get it done, it could be any of which ways. Speaking of his opponent, Brian Battle, he's been in the UFC since 2021. He's beat Tresean Gore, Urbina, and Petrosky, all the UFC Ultimate Fighter boys. He did lose to Fakret Dinov, who got a fucking glitch win at UFC 308, but that's not about this podcast. He's coming off a KO of Kevin Jousset in France on September 28th, 2024, an electric fight. I was watching that fight night. I do like Brian Battle after that, having seen him on Ultimate Fighter as well. I'm a fan of his. So half of his 12 wins have come via submission. He's got 4 knockouts and 2 decision wins. He only has 2 losses, 1 coming via submission and 1 decision loss. So the picks for this fight, I really did enjoy watching Battle. I'm a fan of his now, and as a decent favorite here, I'm taking him to win this fight, minus 225. I think that's decent value. I'm not sure how and which method he gets it done, but I do like his money line as a parlay piece. Given that I don't know how it's going to end, I'm going to leave the distance alone on this fight. So next, we have a featherweight bout between the number 5th ranked featherweight, Mavzar Evloev. He's minus 260 on the money line. His opponent is number 9 ranked Aljamain Sterling. He's plus 210 on the money line. So a little bit about Mavzar Evloev. He's been in the UFC since 2019. He's beat Dan Ige, Diego Lopes, Arnold Allen, 3 very impressive wins. He has never lost a fight in his entire career, albeit also not in the UFC either. So 4 of his 18 wins have come via submission. He has 3 knockout wins, and he has 11 wins by decision. So in his last 8 fights, they've all been decisions. As soon as he joined the UFC, it's been all decisions from there. He's never knocked out or submitted someone within the UFC. His opponent, former champ Aljamain Sterling, he's been in the UFC since 2014. He beat Sandhagen, Peter Yan once, and then got a disqualification win over Peter Yan. I remember watching that. That was a pretty sad affair, state of events there. And looking back on that, that was the UFC in 2021, right when I got into the UFC. I think there was 3 title fights on that card because you had Izzy versus Yan. I think there was a women's title fight, and I think there was Yan versus Sterling. What happened to that? What happened to 3 title fights? We're lucky to get 1 these days. Whatever. He's also beat TJ Dillashaw, Henry Cejudo, Calvin Kattar. He did take that knockout loss to Sean O'Malley in October of last year. So 13 of Aljo's 24 wins have come via decision. He's got 8 submission wins and 3 knockout wins to go along with that. 2 losses via knockout, 2 losses via decision. He has never been submitted in his career up until this point. So the picks here, I definitely think this fight is going to go the distance. I'm sure that's not really great odds, but I do like that as a parlay piece potentially. I know Sterling is not really a popular fighter amongst fans, but I do think he may be worth a play as an underdog here. This fight, I hope it's exciting because it might just be another boring fight. I remember Aljamain Sterling's fight against Calvin Kattar at UFC 300 was kind of the low light of the night. It seems like Evloev's fights are pretty boring as well, so hoping there's some action in this one like I just mentioned. I think when it comes to a decision, anyone can win and the judges can screw things up. You know, Aljamain's a former champion. I do think he can do enough in 3 rounds to pull off 2 rounds, do enough on the ground to get this win over Evloev. So I do like Sterling potentially as a moneyline underdog play here. I also like the fight to go the distance. So moving up the prelims, we have a welterweight bout between Vicente Luque. He's plus 135 on the money line. He faces off against Themba Gorimbo. He is minus 160 on the money line. So a little about Vicente. He's been in the UFC since 2015. He's beat Bilal Muhammad, the current champ. He's beat Nico Price 2 times, Jalen Turner, Mike Perry, Randy Brown, who's on the card, Tyron Woodley, Michael Chiesa, who's on the card, Rafael Dos Anjos. He's lost to Joaquin Buckley, Jeff Neal, Bilal, Wonderboy, and Leon Edwards. So half of Vicente's wins, half of the 22 wins he has come via knockout. He's got 8 submission wins and only 3 decision wins. In his losses, he's taken 6 decision losses. He's been submitted and knocked out 2 times each. His opponent, Themba Gorimbo, he's been in the UFC since 2023. Beating Nico Price. He's on a 4-fight win streak after losing his first fight in the UFC. So 6 of his 14 wins have come via submission, 2 knockout wins and 5 decision wins. He's got 2 submission losses, 1 knockout loss, and 1 decision loss. So the picks here, once again, I'm looking at the underdog in this fight due to his very experienced past in the UFC and also has been training for a long time. Although in this fight, Vicente was training for Nick Diaz. 33 seems to be the prime age for fighters, so I'm leaning with who has more experience. Gorimbo has been good so far, but he hasn't really beat a name that I'm, sitting here looking at his resume being like, wow, that's a really good win. I do like Luque in this fight. I think he may be able to pull a submission on him. If not, it could be a KO for either side, but I'm not confident enough to bet the distance. I don't really know what the method is going to be here. So I do like Luque money line, potentially looking at that. Heading on to our next fight, we have a light heavyweight fight between Dominic Reyes. He is minus 360 on the money line. He faces off against Anthony Smith, who is plus 270 on the money line. So Dominic Reyes, he's been in the UFC since 2017. He beat Jared Cannonier of Vince St. Preux. Odesmir, Weidman, Dustin Jacoby. He's lost to John Jones, which a lot of people say he beat John Jones. He lost to Jan Blachowicz, Yuri, Ryan Spann. So he was on a 4-fight win streak before beating Dustin, or a 4-fight loss streak before beating Dustin Jacoby in June of 2024. I believe I watched that fight only 6 months ago. 8 of his 13 wins have come via knockout. He's got 2 submission wins and 3 decision wins. 3 of his 4 losses have come via knockout. He only has 1 decision loss, which was the loss to John Jones. He's on a 3-fight, or he was on a 3-fight streak of getting knocked out before his most recent win. So his opponent, Anthony Smith, we covered him in both the UFC 301 and the UFC 303 videos. In the UFC 303, he took a decision loss to Roman Dolidze, who was on very short notice in that fight and fighting up a weight class. Just wanted to put that out there. And yeah, if you've watched the former videos, I'm not a fan of Anthony Smith. He's what I like to call a punching bag. He's 36 years old. He's almost at 60 career fights. He has knockout and submission power, but is also susceptible to both. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Anthony Smith, if I'm being honest. He kind of lucked into that submission in the UFC 301 as well. So I do like Reyes in this fight. For the picks, I think we could potentially be looking at a knockout as well. Reyes has that power, and Smith is very susceptible to being knocked out. I think this one definitely ends early, but I'm not so confident that I will bet it. I do like Reyes solidly, though, in this fight, despite the odds being a little lopsided. But as a parlay piece, Reyes at minus 360 will take it. On to the main card of the evening. We have a first fight between Nate Landwehr, who's minus 135. He faces off against Doohoo Choi, who's plus 115 on the money line in the featherweight division. So Nate Landwehr, he's been in the UFC since 2020. He's beat David Onama, who we saw at UFC 309. He's lost to Herbert Burns, Julian Erosa, Dan Ige. He's 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He's 36 years old. So half of Nate's 18 wins have come via knockout. He's got 2 submission wins and 6 decision wins. He's been knocked out twice and submitted once, and 2 decision losses to go along with that. So his opponent, Doohoo Choi, he joined the UFC in 2014. He has no real notable wins. He did lose to Cub Swanson and Jeremy Stevens and Charles Jourdain. He took 4 years off before 2024, coming back and then having a draw and a win since then. He's 33 years old, so entering that prime age for fighting. 12 of his 15 wins have come via knockout. He's got 1 submission win, 2 decision wins. He's only gone to decision in 2 of his 8 UFC fights. He's been knocked out twice and lost 2 decisions in his career, and he's never been submitted. So the picks here, I think this is a weird one, but if we're looking to rally the underdogs, give me Choi. I don't know, I just think there's a chance he can pull this off. He's a bit younger and seemingly a bit better since coming back from his long 4-year break. Granted, his level of competition isn't as high as Landwehr's, so it's hard to gauge how good he actually would be, but I don't think Landwehr is that great either. If I had to predict it, I think this one ends early in the favor of Choi with a knockout win. So what I'm looking at here is Choi moneyline. I'm not confident enough to bet that method, so we'll leave that for now. Next fight on the main card, we have another featherweight fight between the number 13th ranked Bryce Mitchell. He's minus 850 on the money line. He faces off against Kron Gracie, who's plus 500 on the money line. So Bryce Mitchell, he joined the UFC in 2018. He's beat Andre Fili, Edson Barboza, and Dan Ige. A lot of Dan Ige fights on this card. He's lost to Brad Katona, Ilya Tsipura, and Emmett, which was a year ago. His last fight, I think I was watching that fight, but wasn't paying the most close attention. I think it was on the same night as NFL playoffs. 9 of his 16 wins have come via submission, and the rest via decision. He has never knocked an opponent out. He was submitted 2 times and knocked out once in his most recent fight over a year ago in his 3 losses. So his opponent, Kron Gracie, he's joined the UFC in 2019. He beat Alex Caceres. He lost to Cub Swanson and Charles Jourdain. He's another fighter that took a break, as he's only had only 3 UFC fights in the span of 4 years. He has not fought in a year and a half, and he's 36 years old. All of his 5 fights have come. All 5 of his wins have come via submission. He has never knocked out anyone or never won a decision. Both of his losses have come via decision, which are his past 2 fights. So the picks here, very lopsided odds for Bryce Mitchell. That makes his side unbettable to me. However, there are some props here I'm looking at in this one. I think that nice bet of fight to end in submission could come in handy here due to Gracie's experience with submissions, also Bryce Mitchell's experience Most of his wins have come via submission, so I like that bet there. I also think there's a chance this goes the distance. Gracie's last 2 fights have gone the distance, and Mitchell has had a lot of decisions in his career as well. Kind of hypocritical bets if you put them against each other, but one of them will be bound to hit, right? I do think they're both worth a shot if both are at plus odds, especially. So I'm looking at fight to go the distance and fight to end via submission in this fight. On to our third to last fight of the evening, we have a heavyweight bout between the number 2 ranked Cyril Gane. He's minus 370 on the money line. He faces off against number 3 Alexander Volkov, who is plus 275. This is the second matchup between them. In the first match, Cyril Gane got the win. So a little bit about Cyril Gane. He joined the UFC in 2019. He's beat Junior Dos Santos, Rosenstruik, Derek Lewis, Tuivasa, Spivak, and obviously Volkov. The only 2 losses in his career are to Francis Ngannou and John Jones. So 6 of Gane's 12 wins have come via knockout. He's got 3 submissions and 3 decision wins to go along with that as well. His only loss by decision was to Ngannou, which was a pretty boring fight. Ngannou just took him down and just dominated him. Ngannou is just a freak, so I'm not putting much behind that. He also got submitted by John very early, 2 minutes into the fight. That was in early 2023. He's come back since then and got a win. So his opponent, Alexander Volkov, he joined the UFC in 2016. He's beat Fabricio Werdum, Greg Hardy, Alistair Overeem, Tybura, Rosenstruik, Romanov, Tuivasa, Pavlovich. His most recent fight in August, I believe. He lost, or that was June maybe. He lost to Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades, Cyril Gane, obviously, and Tom Aspinall. So of Volkov's 38 wins, 24 have come via knockout. He's got 10 decision wins and 4 submission wins. 5 of his 10 losses have come via decision, 3 submission losses, and 2 knockout losses. So the picks here, I do like Gane. He won the first fight. I don't see what will change here in this one. He's fought better against higher competition as well, beating up on common opponents. I think Volkov is running a little bit hot after that, in my opinion. Kind of a fluky performance from Pavlovich. I was expecting Pavlovich to win that, so maybe I'm just salty. But I do think Gane is still a very good fighter with only 2 losses to 2 of the best heavyweights to ever do it. Obviously, at the odds, Gane is just a nice parlay piece, but that's about it. I think this is a tough one to decide how it ends, so I'm staying away from the distance. I do like Gane moneyline minus 340. And now for the co-main event of the evening, we have a welterweight bout between number 3 Shavkat Rakhmonov. He's minus 390 in the money line. He faces off against number 7 welterweight Ian Machado Gary plus 290 in the money line. So a little bit about Shavkat Rakhmonov. If you don't know, he's been in the UFC since 2020. He's beat Neil Magny, Jeff Neal, and Wonderboy Stephen Thompson. 10 of his 18 wins have come via submission. The other 8 have come via knockout. Never been to a decision in his career. He's on a 3-fight submission streak, all against gatekeepers, what I consider gatekeepers of the division at this point, especially Wonderboy in his older age. He lacks 2 inches in this fight, but has 2.5 inches of reach. His opponent, Ian Machado Gary, we previewed him in the UFC 303 pod, where he got a very sketchy decision win over Michael Venom Page. He could have easily lost that fight. Interesting rounds there, but I think he ultimately did pull it off enough, and he was undefeated. So I think they do tend to lean towards undefeated fighters when it's a close decision. So he has some knockouts mixed in, but mostly decision wins, and he's on a 3-fight decision streak here. So the picks here, it's got to be Shavkat, right? He's just so awesome. I think Shavkat's amazing. It's going to be really hard to pick against him. I think there's a chance he goes for something like a submission and can pull it off against Gary. I do think Gary is a bit overrated after watching his past 2 performances. I didn't walk away very impressed. Shavkat isn't going to be someone you can just piece up and get a decision win over. I think this has got Shavkat written all over it. So I like his money line as a parlay piece as well. And now to our final fight of the evening. We have a fight for the flyweight championship between Alexandre Pantoja. He's minus 270 on the money line. He faces off against Kai Asakura, who's plus 210 on the money line. So Alexandre Pantoja, we covered him in the UFC 301 video where he defended his belt against Erceg in a sketchy decision win. I said sketchy again, but he barely won this fight. 3-2 if Erceg doesn't go for takedowns like an idiot. Erceg is the champion of the flyweight at the time, which would be a crazy history. Not really, because no one really cares about flyweight. But Pantoja's never been knocked out or submitted. He's on a 6-fight win streak. This is his 4th fight defending the belt. Kai Asakura, his opponent, this is his first fight in the UFC, 21-4 in his previous promotion. He has not fought in about a year. 13 of his 21 wins have come via knockout. He's got 3 submission wins, 5 decision wins. So in his losses, he's been knocked out 3 times and lost a decision fight in 4 lost a decision 4 times. So the picks here, once again, only one. Let me cut back. He's been knocked out 3 times, only lost 1 decision to make up his 4 losses. That's what I meant by that. The picks here. So once again, I'm going with the favorite, Pantoja. It being Asakura's first fight in the UFC is very worrisome from both perspectives. He could be either an insane fighter or Pantoja will beat him by decision. I lean towards the latter because I've seen these new UFC fighters kind of struggle early in their debuts. I think Kai does show flashes, but Pantoja beats him 4-1, 3-2 in all rounds. Pantoja is very well rested and kind of slept on as a champion. He basically has run through the division: Moreno, Royval, Urcheg. So I do like Pantoja's money line here, and I also like this fight to go the distance as bets in that one. So now let's get into my bets that I will have, and then we will get to the official DubCast card for UFC 310. So starting it out, I like my little methods. Hopefully these are not too bad odds. If they are, we can pair the first 2 together. So we have Kennedy Nzechukwu by KO. Pretty simple there. He's just kind of a knockout power, heavyweight division. Austin Hooper by submission. This one might be a little bit better. Just trying to look for something in that fight to bet on. Austin Hooper at like minus 1150 is not going to cut it. Michael Chiesa money line, little underdog money there. Hopefully he slips back to the plus so we can take him. Even if not, he'll be at like minus 110 maybe by Saturday. That'll still be a good bet, basically even. We have the Chiesa and Griffin fight to go the distance. 2 older guys. It's been bad because the older fights have been not going the distance, but I don't know. I think this has a chance to do it. I don't know. When you picture 2 old guys fighting, it's like barely throwing and they just can go the distance. We'll see. Van and Durden over 1.5 rounds. Not sure if that'll be in the money, what Vegas thinks will happen in this Van versus Durden fight. But if they put the over under at 1.5, I'm slamming that over. Also like Choi money line. Throw a little money on that. He's slowly going down. I believe he's at like plus 110 now. Get him now plus 115. I forget, but I like Choi as a potential underdog to pull it off. It's UFC fighting. You have to try and find your underdogs. What can you say, man? It's like I've been doing research on the favorites and the underdogs. Favorites just rule this fucking sport, so you have to try and find the couple underdogs that can do it. I was gonna say one of my main DubCast picks was just gonna be to take a bunch of underdogs and see what happens. Like bet $5 in every reasonable underdog. I'm interested to see what the case would be on that. I'm still doing a little bit of research on that, so I will get back to you on that. But I don't know. It seems like there's too much variability where sometimes favorites just win like 10 or 11 of the 12 or 13 fights. Like it's absurd. But I do like Choi as an underdog there. We'll also look at Gracie and Mitchell to go the distance, and then also Gracie and Mitchell to end via submission. So hopefully no knockout in that fight. We're in the money. Not sure what Vegas will think of that one either. To go the distance might be minus money, but as always, we can adjust parlays, switch things around there. Last one will be Pantoja and Asakura to go the distance. Again, not sure what the odds are on this at this point, but we can mix some of those together, make some good parlays, win some money. But now it's time for the official DubCast picks. Time to get back on track. Time to win some bets. Time to have a positive UFC day. It's been a while, man. Maybe since UFC 306 in the Sphere. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think we've had 3 cards since then, but I'm looking to be back in the green this Saturday. Big day, college football championships and UFC. So let's get right into it. First pick, Vicente Luque, money line. Like him a lot. I think Garimbo is a little overrated. Luque's been in camp for a while. He didn't have the best performances last time out, but he can come out there and shock some people this time, bring back the old Luque, I believe. So we're taking Luque money line. Next one, very frisky, Aljamain Sterling money line plus 210. Evloev's undefeated, like I said. I think the judges like the undefeated fighters. They tend to give them the benefit of the doubt. But I think Sterling will leave no doubt. He has really good wrestling. He's kind of slept on at this point in his career. I think this is kind of a little bit of disrespect. He's a former champion, not what he loses championship like a year ago. Looked good against Calvin Kattar. I think this could be a win for Aljamain Sterling. Next, we have the distance parlay. So I like Durden and Van to go the distance, and Sterling and Evloev to go the distance. Now, this might be not that great odds, but we need to see some things go through the hoop. Shit happens. We're getting desperate out here. Hopefully, that's a good enough odds to make some money, though. We have our big favorites parlay, last parlay of the day. 5 picks on a parlay. It's crazy. It's UFC betting, but it's favorites. Hopefully, none of these fuck up. In all reality, one of these will probably lose and will probably be out of the money. But coming from the main event down, we have Pantoja money line. Love him against Asakura. A lot of people think Asakura is going to DQ. I don't necessarily think that. I think he comes out with kind of the UFC yips, doesn't really know what he's doing in the octagon. And Pantoja, a very experienced fighter, will take control of that. I mean, saw him control Urchag, and Urchag was just being a dumbass. I don't know. I like Pantoja. I respect him after that fight. He did show a little bit of vulnerability, but I think he can pull this off against Asakura, who's never fought in the UFC before. Shavkat also scares me a little bit just because Ian Machado Gary is undefeated, but when it's like you think of Shavkat and Ian Machado Gary in your head, it's like Shavkat smash. So I'm taking Shavkat as well. Cyril Gane, I believe, is one of the more underrated UFC fighters. This one I'm not really worried about at all. His only 2 losses are against John Jones and Ngannou. I want to say it would be a walk in the park, but it's the UFC, so you never know. But I do trust Gane a lot to win this fight. Next one, Dominic Reyes against Anthony Smith. I'm always going to be betting against Anthony Smith. The odds are pretty wide on this one, but throw all these picks together. I like Reyes as part of this parlay as well. Last one, Brian Battle. He has the probably lowest odds of all those people I just mentioned, but he's a dog. He's one of my favorite fighters in this card. I think he can get this W pretty easily as well. All minus 225 or more. 5 picks in a parlay. Hopefully we're seeing some green there. I mean, it's like you got to figure this out. I might make several versions of this parlay, but I'll keep this as the pick. Ones that are scaring me the most right now are Pantoja. I think for some reason I just had the thought that Asakura could just randomly win, so I might just hedge with Asakura straight up, especially if that is the last leg on it. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully you guys have a great UFC 310, UFC 309, and 308. And frankly, I forgot how 307 went, but it's been rough, man. It's been a rough streak for me on these betting picks. So let me know in the comments who you're taking. What are the good bets for this weekend? Did you guys like my bets? Will you be tailing? Will you be fading? I wouldn't blame you either way. So this will be coming out Wednesday morning. More content shortly. We got Survivor tonight. We'll be doing a review and reaction to Survivor as always. The weekly review. Hopefully it comes out on Wednesday night. But you never know with my busy life, right? Besides that, NFL stream yesterday with Rat and Cam. Mikey wasn't able to come. That was a great stream, I thought. Good to always get new people and get new ideas. Picking against Week 14 spreads, recapping Week 13. So that was a good time as well. Besides that, expect your usual movie reviews, content. Survivor's coming to a close. NFL is coming to a close. I'll have a college football prediction bracket out for you guys. So content never will die. Movie reviews, shows, as things go on. So as always, appreciate your support. If you're here, leave a subscribe. We'll be covering UFC 311, 312, all of them. So appreciate you guys. Like the video, dislike it, comment, do whatever you need to do, subscribe. We're on all platforms. So as always, go and win your bets, play some good ones, and be easy.